ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय
Asmad-Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad-Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmad-Sarva-Gurubhyo Namaha. We're continuing on with our discussion of Sandhya Vandanam. So, why should Sandhya Vandanam be performed? In the present age, a good many have given up the practice of Sandhya Vandanam altogether after a token performance in the initial period. So just after they took Upanayana, they may have done it, or they may have done it when they were kids, but they've given it up, and still their conscience also ably supported by the indifference of the elders around them. What is even worse, cutting a divergent path, these persons, the grown up among them, would even argue that the practice in question does not fit with the fast-moving life pattern of the present day, with its social, economic stress making alarming inroads into the leisurely religious pursuits of old. By way of giving a sop to their conscience, they would even assert that the Vedic mantras, couched in Sanskrit with a distinct vocabulary and grammar of its own, have no relevance in a world where the knowledge of Sanskrit is confined to a limited few, a microscopic minority. The prayer to the omniscient God transcends the limitations of language, and he could be heard by anyone speaking in any language. And above all, there's nothing like the language of silence, the silent communion with God, the meaningful rapport of a longing soul with its creator, ever alert to and solicitous of the former's uplift. This would be on a par with the vain boasts of those who would repudiate the worship of a personal God, going all the way to the temple on the ground that God is right inside them, and they do meditate on him in their own way, though not in the conventional form and according to their own convenience. Naturally, it sounds hollow and pretentious, if not fallacious, to the traditional devotee who doggedly follows in the footsteps of the eminent elders, the great saints, seers and preceptors, who set the pace for them long, long ago, but for whom we, at this distance of time, with our meager knowledge of the divine and the natural constraints of vocal expressions, will be little better than dumb creatures. Of course, we need not dispute or disagree with the view that silent prayer, straight from the heart, as against the mechanical articulation of mantras, is an unfamiliar dialect, at least to God. The more so when the chanting is not open to one and all, is good in its own way. Nevertheless, it has to be reiterated that the practice of Sandhya Vandana is in the very form in which it has been enjoined by Brahman, that is, Jagat Kartru Maheshwarasya Divyagya, the divine command of the Supreme Lord who ushered in this universe, is indispensable and inviolable, and nothing will please him better. Participants are indeed free to adopt, in addition, any other practices as fit in with their mental attitudes, provided that they are not repugnant of the basic faith. Any exercise of this kind can only be cumulative and not alternative. Now, how Sandhya Vandana can help you? All actions of the men in the material world are result-oriented, and it is but natural that the spiritually unevolved, who do not as yet believe in disinterested, selfless service, divested of all thinking in terms of personal gains, would want to know the benefits which would accrue to them through the performance of Sandhya Vandana and the ill effects of its non-performance. As already stated at the outset, there is the command of the Supreme Lord, which has to be obeyed, of course, as a matter of course, without looking at any results as such. Even as a dutiful son has the supreme satisfaction of having carried out his father's command and fulfilled his desire without looking beyond that. Even so, it deserves to be noted that Manusmriti, right, Manusmrita, right, points out that the sages who performed Sandhya Vandana got their longevity extended enormously. So that's one benefit. Actually, the pranayama, right, the breath control, which we practice, which is an integral part of Sandhya Vandana, and which will be explained later in this work in detail, helps one to hold one's breath and thereby extend one's longevity, literally defying death by deferring its onslaught to a later date. According to the Ayurveda, one's longevity is measured by the number of breaths in one's life and not on just time. In several Smritis, also, the benefits accruing to those who perform Sandhya Vandana have been enumerated. They are freedom from disease, long life, and all-round prosperity. Above all, the participants are invested with a special halo or Brahma Tejas, illuminating their faces with ultra-mundane brilliance. Sandhya Vandana's effect on the sun. In the course of Sandhya Vandana, the participant offers arghya water, right? That is, takes water in both the palms, kept open and held together, and throws it in the air in the direction of the sun, uttering the mantra, right? So this is repeated thrice. That is, the oblation is made 3 times in all. If, however, the participant fails to perform it in time, at the appropriate time indicated earlier, he has to offer one more arghya by way of expiation or prayaschitta, or atonement, for the belated or premature offering. The Vedic texts reveal that these argyas, delivered skyward from the palms of the participants, serve as missiles to quell the multitudes of powerful demons known as the Mantehars, the inhabitants of the island of Manteha, who obstruct the diurnal course of the sun from sunrise to midday and sunset, and help the sun move in its orbit all right. The mantric force behind the argyas, the psychic force generated by them, gets transformed into concrete lethal weapons at the other end. There is an endless proliferation of these demons, like bedbugs, and hence the perpetual need for argyas in question. Further, the Upanishadic texts, like Chandogya Upanishad 1:6, declare that the Supreme Lord pervades all things and all beings. All things and all beings all over the universe, and that he is seen inside the sun as one with a golden hue or color, with a pair of eyes lovely as a lotus in full bloom. Yayesha antaraditya hiranmayaha purusho drishyate. Yasya yata kapyasam pundarika akshini. But to the mere astronomer, the sun is just a ball of fire, and neither he nor the astro scientist can discern the presence of the great creator inside the core of the sun. As the subject under discussion is a right falling within the compass of a religion rooted in the Vedas of unquestionable veracity, that is authority, it is no good looking askance at it and taking the Vedic utterances lightly, entailing a degree of unwanted skepticism. Again, it may be argued with an air of complacence or insouciance, by no means verifiable by those who have given up the performance of Sandhya Vandana since long ago, that the sun's diurnal motion goes on well intact east to west and back again to the east, despite they're not delivering the missiles in the form of argues to quell the demons impeding the solar orbit. They might also ask what happens when the sun moves back to the east from the west during the nights when it would be visible only in the other hemisphere. These men should know that there are several islands in the universe of which our Jambudvip is just one. The inhabitants of the islands like Swetatdweep and Valakilyas, etc., are ever alert to their religious duties and would therefore not be guilty of dereliction of duties like these defaulters. So other benefits of Sandhya Vandana. If pranayama, breath control, could improve one's health and extend the longevity of the person, Gayatri Japa, or chanting of the Gayatri Mantra, referred to in the body of the text, protects the chanter from the pernicious sins which would otherwise attract drastic punishments in hell. So, pataka nam, upapataka nam. So there are these mahapatikas and upapatikas, right? A mahapatika is a great sin. There are 5 great sins, and the upapatikas are the smaller sins. Gayantam trayate yasmin gayatri ityabhiyate. The noblest quality in man is that which lifts him above the commonplace level of selfish pursuits to the domain of selfless service to mankind at large, right? Great indeed will be his joy on beholding that of his beneficiaries and so on. And so, even his joy acquires the luster and aroma of selflessness, being related to the joy of those relieved by him of their erstwhile distress. If Sandhya Vandanam could relieve no less than Surya, who lights the world, from the mushrooming demons, what greater joy and edification can the participants look for? We shall now pass on to the preliminaries to be put through before one is eligible to perform Sandhya Vandanam and embarks on it. So Upanayanam. Upanayanam is a must before you do Sandhya Vandanam. So it says here, Janmana jayate Shudraha, Karmana jayate Dvijaha. So says the Vedas. One is not born a Brahmin at birth. Actually, at birth, he is born a Shudra and is rendered a Dvija or twice born in the sense of spiritual regeneration only through samskaras, purificatory ceremonies, like Upanayanam, the sacred thread ceremony. The word samskara means an act or ritual, which when put through renders the individual fit to perform a particular duty. The material content in the mother's womb of the progeny, with a great deal of inherent organic impurity, forming the nucleus of the progeny, will suffice to establish the necessity for the subsequent cleaning by means of samskaras. These samskaras prescribed in the scriptural texts are a chain of rites, right from birth, preparatory, and to one embarking on Vedic chantings and Vedic rites. The child should be born of duly married couple and not outside of wedlock, this itself constituting a part of the samskara. Even during pregnancy, that is, before the birth of the child, religious rites are performed for ensuring safe delivery and sound progeny with a built-in disposition for a favorable life on emergence from the mother's womb. Even the naming of the baby, when it is 11 days old, is a samskara. The naming of the baby, our elders had been very particular in giving the names of deities so that the mere utterance of these names may generate auspiciousness and faith in God. In the 6th month after the birth of the baby, it is ceremoniously fed with solid food. This samskara, or ritualistic practice, being known as anaprasana. So, as a matter of fact, Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, is not merely a view of life, but also a way of life. The other samskaras, such as chola or tuft-wearing ceremony, follow. By far, the most important of the samskaras is the upanayana, or the sacred thread ceremony, conferring on the subject eligibility to chant the Vedas and perform Vedic rites, including the Sandhya Vandanam. The word upanayana means keeping one close. By upa, near, and nayana, to bring, to fetch. In good old days, the boys underwent a course of Gurukula Vas. Gurukula Vas, I mean living in the Gurukul or the house of the teacher, right? Over a period of 12 or 13 to 13 years, corresponding to somewhat to the period required these days for graduation from college. The preceptor used to keep the boys eligible for instruction close to him, perform Upanayanam, and impart religious instruction thereafter. This Upanayanam is also known as Brahmopadesha. So Brahma Upadesha. Upadesha means instruction. Brahma means topmost. So as the subject is initiated by the Acharya to Savitri, Gayatri, Gayatri, Gayatri mantra, and led towards Brahman, the Supreme. At this investiture, the disciple wears the sacred thread, Yagyo Pavita, and acquires the appellation of a brahmachari, becomes known as a brahmachari. The sacred thread is the Brahma Sutra. As already stated, the Vedic chantings and performance of the Vedic rites, should be commenced only after the samskara of Upanayanam. The expression Upanayanam could therefore mean being led close to the Vedas, Veda Samipanayanam. Actually, Brahmopadesha is an enunciation of the highest ultimate truth, Paratattva, proclaimed by the Vedas. Yagyo Pavitam Dharanam. Yagyo Pavita Dharanam. That is, wearing the sacred thread, Brahma Sutra, which is an integral part of Upanayana. Vishnu Bhagavan is also known as Yagya, Yagyavai Vishnuhu, Yagyo, Yagyapatir, etc. in the Vishnu Sahasranam. As the sacrificial rites are all dedicated to Lord Vishnu, these rites are all termed as yagyas. Upavitam means that which surrounds. The thread that is as termed, the thread that surrounds Vishnu is therefore Yagyopavita. Lord Vishnu, or Sriman Narayana, is the Antaryami, or the indwelling supersoul, the inner controller, seated in the heart region of everyone, and the thread going around the body from the upper left down to the navel and back to the shoulder via the back is appropriately called Yagyopavita. This term could also mean Yagyartam Upavitam, meaning thereby that without this Upavitam, right, this stick, the term could also mean Yagyartam Upavitam, indicating that thereby without this Upavitam, the Vedic rites cannot be performed. This sacred thread is also called the Brahma Sutra. Why? The sacred thread is in 3 rows or strands knotted together, the knot also being named after Brahman, the Brahma Granthi. It symbolizes the conjunction of the 3 fundamental entities, truths, namely Chit, the sentient living beings, the Jivatmans, right, the individual souls, Achit, the non-sentient matter, that is the body, and Ishvara, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sriman Narayana, Brahman, the super soul, and the indweller, the Paramatma. In an inseparable combination, the keynote of Brahma Sutras, right, It could also denote the mind, word, and deed, knotted together and brought under spiritual control. The first alternative shall at once explain why the sacred thread is called Brahma Sutra. The ends of the knot should point upwards to signify the final goal in view, namely ascent to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in heaven, his transcendental abode, of Sri Vaikuntha. The knot should remain close to the heart region, the seat of Antaryami, the Lord within. The sacred thread should neither extend below the navel nor stay above it. In the former case, if it extends below the navel, loss of tapas or spiritual buildup, right, or spiritual energy occurs, while in the latter case, diminution of longevity results. If the thread is too thick, it results in a loss of reputation. If too thin, it results in a loss of wealth. The brahmachari bachelor wears just one sacred thread, comprising of 3 strands, and the grihasta's householders wear a pair or 2, each of 3 strands. And the vanaprasthas who reside in the forest, leading a secluded life, can add another thread, the third one, also with 3 strands, in lieu of the upper garment. While sannyasins, right, who take the holy order and the saffron robe, wear a single thread comprising, however, 4 strands to denote the 4th stage of life. This is, of course, for Sri Vaishnavas. The mantra one utters. Another thing that I heard was that they can wear 4 like that. And of course, the Advaita sannyasis, they don't wear it at all. They wrap it around their danda and then cover that with a piece of deerskin. The mantra one utters when one wears the thread is an address in the following terms. May you wear the lovely Yagyapavita, lofty and pure, worn first by Prajapati Brahma, the bestower of long life, so as to confer on you strength and spiritual luster. So that mantra is Yagyo Pavitam Paramam Pavitram Prajapatehe Yat Sahajam Purasta'ate Ayushyamagram Patimuncha Subram Yagyo Pavitam Balamastu Tejaha. It is incumbent on the Brahmin boy to go through the samskara of Upanayana on attaining the age of 8, a Kshatriya on attaining the age of 11, and a Vaishya on attaining the age of 12. If this age limit is exceeded by beyond 16 years, performance of Upanayana becomes but a futile exercise. These are all rules that are given in Manusmriti and other of the Dharma Shastra, Shmriti Shastras, which deal with the whole medieval system of varnashram according to by birth and everything. Those eligible to initiate the youngster into this samskara in place of the preceptor of yore are the father, the father's father, meaning the grandfather, the elder brother, and traditionally constituted acharya in an apostolic succession or a guru parampara. This samskara ushers in the second birth, the spiritual regeneration, the acharya or teacher being the father, the Savitri Gayatri mantra being the mother. The baby born at birth came out of the virya, or babies born at birth comes out of the virya, right, energy of the father, dissipated downwards below the navel solar plexus, the seat of energy in the mother's womb. The spiritual progeny, the Jnana Putra, right, the boy that's going through Upanayana, right, now born, is that emanating from the said virya, drawn down from the acharya's spiritual reservoir in the navel region. As stated earlier, Upanayana is just a samskar, rendering a person fit for Vedadhyayana. Vedadhyayana means chanting, learning to chant the Vedas or learning the Vedas. And which is the raison d'etre, which is the main purpose, the motive or modus operandi of the Dvijas, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. And the performance of Vedic rites and rituals. But alas, let alone the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, even among Brahmins, not even 1 in 1,000 takes to Vedadhyayana, learning Vedic mantras or learning the Vedas. On the other hand, even the immediate elders do not seem to be aware of the purport and implication of Upanayana, Brahma Upadesh. Upadesh means instruction. Brahma means on God or Brahman, on what is spiritual. And loosely refer to it as the investiture of the thread and spend lavishly on it as if it is a social function or festive mela, right, festival, according scope for fun and frolic, the primary Vedic aspect being relegated to an insignificant place. Having thus needlessly committed themselves to a huge expenditure on such occasions, the parents do not have any hesitation in putting it off indefinitely, ignoring the age factor prescribed therefore, as stated earlier, for want of the requisite funds and other facilities. It therefore needs to be emphasized again, over and over again, that Upanayanam is a purely Vedic function to be put through within a specific age limit with a view to embarking on Veda Dhyana in good time. Financial and other constraints should by no means stand in the way of putting through a purely religious function where there is no place for social fanfare and the resultant extravagance. It would be sheer indifference, unpardonable if the well-to-do parents also put off this very important function with some pretext or other and delay the spiritual initiation of their male progeny, literally depriving them of timely spiritual nourishment. The author of this treatise will feel amply requited, rather heave a sigh of relief if it could serve as an eye-opener to the large number of parents and guardians who have hitherto been dragging their feet with an easy conscience. So the next section is about actually performing the Sandhya Vandanam.
The basic principles again, that if you don't do it, reiterating it, that if you doesn't do it, there is a repercussion of losing the Brahminghood, and then you noted the prayer Paramam Pavitram
Yagyo Pavitam Paramam Pavitram Prajapatehe Yat Sahajam Purastat Ayushamagram Padimuntusam from Yagyo Pavitam Balavasitejaha. Yeah, that's Yagyo Pavita Dharana mantra. Okay, so the point is, so it has to be gone through the Upanayam and then the sun, but it's only for people who need to learn and to chant the Vedas. If you have rituals that you need to use Vedic mantras for, that's the point. So so Vaishnavism can be practiced without Vedic mantras at all, right? Vaishnavism is a separate system. Like I said, the Varnashram system, which is the Vedic system, can be very long and can take a long time, even more than one birth. And the Vaishnava system is much shorter and much easier. And we don't need to, actually don't need to learn the Vedas or anything like that. We can learn the purpose of the Vedas. That's fine. We can learn the meaning. But we don't actually have to, if we don't want to, we don't need to learn Vedic mantras and things like that. But if one wants to do that, the adhikari or the qualification is that he should have Upanayanam and perform the Sandhya Vandanam.
But I think you had noted previously also that without even the marriage ceremony and other rituals, but especially the marriage ceremony, the boy should have the Upanaya Sanskar done. So
well, the thing is, there are different marriage ceremonies. There are different ceremonies for marriage.
Sorry.
Yeah. Only there's eight forms of marriage, and only a few of them are for dvijas and are done with Vedic mantras.
Yeah.
Right. Some of them are not done with mantra at all. Gandharva Vivaha, there's no mantras at all. Right. If you can do a samskar in a pancharatric way or a Puranic way also. So it's not necessary if you're not practicing using Vedic mantras, or if you're not using Vedic mantras in the samskaras, if you're doing the samskaras with other mantras, Puranic or pancharatric mantras, then there's also no need for Upanayam. So Upanayam is Vedic Diksha. It's Vedic initiation. Right? Whereas we have also in the Agamas, in the Pancharatra and in Vaishnavism, we have other forms of Diksha, which are purely Vaishnava. So they don't have to be combined. They don't have to be combined. Now, some acharyas have combined them, like Bhakti Siddhanta combined the Upanayanam and the Vaishnava Diksha. But his reason for doing that was to show that Vaishnavas are in a place and a time, in Bengal and in India in that time, when Vaishnavas were considered to be low class. He wanted to show that Vaishnavas were equal, or if not greater than Brahmins. Mm-hmm. So Brahmins, no doubt, in the Varnashram system, the Brahmins are praised, and they're the topmost class in the Varnashram system. But amongst in a Vaishnav society, it's not the Brahmins that are the highest, but the Vaishnavas who are the highest.
One question though, I remember seeing a documentary, I think it was Divavision, one of those productions, where they were speaking about the person, and you noted it in these and Vandana, that they'll be shooting missiles against the demons who'd be attacking the sun.
You can take it as metaphorical. The idea of offering argyas with the Gayatri mantra is to defeat those demons. Those demons are the demons that cloud our intellect.
All right.
Yeah. So in the scriptures, it may say that, this demon is attacking the sun and covering the sun. So the sun represents our intellect. If our intellect shines forth, it's fine. But if it gets covered by clouds, mm-hmm. right? So anyway, you can take it in an analogy way, because obviously, if we do Sandhya Vandanam and we do argya, we're offering argya with the Gayatri mantra like that, we don't see any missile shooting off towards the sun, right?
No. Okay,
so it's not to be taken totally literally. The idea is we have to understand the analogy, right? Just darkness represents ignorance.
Yeah.
Right? Even though there's a thing called night school. You can go to university at night. But darkness represents ignorance, right? So because darkness represents ignorance, light represents knowledge. So mm-hmm. there are three main natural sources of light in the world. There's the sun, the moon, and fire, right? These are the three main sources of light in this world, right? The sun being the greatest one. The sun is the greatest one. So the sun shines, and we are able to see things. We're able to get knowledge like that. Yeah. So the idea is that the Gayatri mantra addresses Surya Narayana within the sun globe, who shines down on us, and he inspires he gives us inspiration, and he clears up all our doubts, and mm-hmm. we are able to have knowledge mm-hmm. because of his light. It's an analogy like that. Yeah, right. But I mean, you have to understand also that you need light to get knowledge too. If it's dark and you can't see anything, then you're stumbling around, right? So as soon as you turn the light on, you can see and you walk. If there's dark, then you just turn the light on, like that. There's a story about one teacher, Vedic teacher, and he had a gurukul, and he had two disciples. He had two shishyas, two students, right? And he said, I'm going to give you 1 rupee each. So he said, I want to give you 1 rupee each, and I want you to spend that rupee on something that will help you, in your studies, right? Will help you because you're students in the Gurukul, right? So yeah. one boy, he decided, I'm going to buy a whole lot of hay, whole lot of straw, and I'm going to put it in my room. I have a room, and I'm going to put it in my room so that I have a very nice bed to sleep on, and I'll get good rest. And when I get good rest, then I'll be able to study better, maybe. His idea was like that. So he did that with his rupee. The other guy, the other boy, he bought a lamp, a small lamp. Mm. He bought a small lamp, and so he could stay up at night when it was dark. In those days, they didn't have electricity, and by lighting the lamp, he was able to study the books, and he was able to study the teachings of the teacher, even at night. So then the teacher saw each of the students, so he said, I consider that this student was more intelligent, that he bought the lamp, right? Because it's that is more of a help for him in
Yeah.
learning. So he praised that student, and he said the other student, he said you should learn from this person. He's good, he's smart, he's intelligent, like that. Yeah, this other student was also intelligent, but not as intelligent as the second guy.
Applicability.
All right. So anyway, it's just a story. We don't know if it's a true story or not a true story. It gives you it explains some things to you and lets you understand the meaning. So we have to think. So there are many analogies and many stories and things like that. All of them have some meaning and some motto and some there's some message or some lesson that we can learn from all of these stories. Yeah, but it's not necessarily always literal message. In the case of that story, the student literally was able to study more. He got more information, more knowledge, more jnana just by lighting a lamp. So that's the idea when we pray to Sriman Narayana in the sun, that we pray that he enthuses our meditation, like that. He enthuses us to know more. The Brahman is an intellectual class, priestly class, but also intellectual class. The Brahmins, they study all forms of knowledge.
Mhm.
Even we see in the Bhagavad Gita we have one Brahmin was teaching military arts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Darur. Yeah.
Dhanurveda.
Om Namo Narayanaye. Om Namo Narayanaye.